Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, all. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And roll call, Francesca. Here. Here.
Here.
Here. I'm here, thank you. Okay, so the first item of business is consent items. And we have the approval of the October 6th minutes. I believe that's what's on here. And we have any questions or comments? If not, I do. I hate to be picky, but in public appearance, item 4, the way that it's listed here, that Edwards reviewed the priorities and met with the Strategic Plan Priorities Committee. O'Neill, Wilkowski, and Sovereign were absent. I think 2 out of the 3 were there. Isn't that right?
I think there should be a semicolon, O'Neill, Witkowski, semicolon, then Sovereign was absent.
Yeah,
Right.
something to break it up.
Yeah.
And then the last sentence, they, I guess, well, it's not well, yeah, the subcommittee on Colton Hall and the Path of History. And is it the same they, or I think I requested that we have the city attorney visit us at this session. And obviously it's not happening. We got a report from her, but on a motion, it was passed. So I think it ought to reflect that we actually requested a member of the city attorney's office to visit us.
That's how I understand it too, because, it's difficult. You get a memo. It's hard to respond to a memo with questions, but we thought somebody from the city attorney's office, either Chrissy or one of the deputies would be here, and we would go over that, and then we could ask questions.
So
That wasn't the way you understood it, Brian?
We didn't have one available at that time, so I asked them to follow up with we didn't have one available to attend for today, so I asked them to send in a document which was similar to what we've worked with the Board of Library Trustees. So this is a similar kind of information that's been shared with Board of Library Trustees, so to
I
align
talked
with
to
them.
Christine, she said that she wasn't invited. Maybe it fell through the cracks or something, but she said she'd be glad to come
Okay,
or send someone, but she wasn't invited to this meeting.
I'm not sure which one I reached out to directly, because we have a direct, we have a representative for library, we have a representative for museums. So I have 2 different city attorneys that I actually work with on there. So depending on if it's a library issue or a museum issue. And I know I reached out just about it, but it might have been lost in translation because I sent it via email rather than phone call.
Yeah.
So I didn't meet with them in person, so I can follow up with them. But I think having the document ahead of time also provides you with insight so that they have a baseline of where you can go from there. So that's why I wanted you guys to have a baseline of this is the understanding from the subcommittees versus ad hoc subcommittees. So it wasn't just a general Q&A. It was like, this is a baseline of the understanding of what the city's premise is. And so I can go back and follow up with that.
So where are we leaving this? Somebody from the city attorney's office, and I would suggest you go directly to Chrissy, talk to the department head. That somebody from the city attorney's office will be at our next meeting, the first item, first public appearance item on the agenda. No, that was a question. Is that how we're leaving it? Oh, Francesca says yes, so, okay.
But I'll make those, corrections. Were there any other?
Well, in the next paragraph, it talks about O'Neill suggested the city of Monterey open a city museum and requested to agendize this topic, but it's not here. And so I don't know, maybe that doesn't need to be changed, but at some point, I think we'd like to do that.
It wasn't just something that was,
Yeah, I guess it can stay vague.
But at some point, we should have a meeting. We're starting to collect information. And unless we can discuss that information, it doesn't do us any good.
Yeah, I would suggest, I set up a meeting with Monterey History and Art for the middle of November. That's the only time I could do it because the president is on an extended trip to Europe. So I would suggest that, and I think Bob and Tim are going to attend that meeting because you and I are out of the area. I would suggest that we have that November meeting and then put it on in the December agenda as a follow-up.
I agree.
When we had the annual meeting, as I mentioned, he seemed enthusiastic about working with the city.
That's right. Okay, any other comments or suggestions on the minutes? Okay, we have one other consent item.
Oh, we need I move to,
two items.
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So
that's,
you're going to take the whole consent with one motion. Yeah.
yeah. The second item is the recommended appropriation of 30,000 in restricted grant funds from the Museum Trust Fund. And this has an explanation. So Brian, you want to fill us in?
Sure thing. So if you see the attachment that we have the grant that was approved on June 30th, 2022. This is prior to my joining here in the city of Monterey. But this is the walking the path of history in the 21st century, a new look at those forgotten. So this is something we are working with the community impact grant. We have received notice of the $30,000. So we are looking at appropriating this fund. So making a recommendation through the MCAC so we can get those funds as we have the RFP out right now for people to bid on this project. So this is basically making the motion so that we can accept this funds so we can go forward with this grant.
Okay, any questions, comments?
I move we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the entire consent agenda.
With the changes, as you noted, Chair, in the minutes, right?
Yes,
And then I can see that Commissioner Sovereign is on the Zoom. See that?
welcome, Mike.
So, you can move it over. You can see which of them is-
Yeah, I gotta figure out how to turn this thing on. I got it.
Mike's standing outside of the mural at Portola Hotel.
Yeah. They're shooting at him.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes and the recommended appropriation with the amendments to or changes in the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
from Commissioner Sullivan.
You're muted, Mike.
Oh, sorry, I,
Okay. That concludes the consent agenda. And now it's time for public comments. Do we have any? There are no public in the hall here. Do we have any online?
There are two ways to virtually participate in today's Museum and Cultural Arts Commission meeting. You may join on Zoom using your computer, tablet, or smartphone, and you may call into the Zoom meeting. To join the meeting on Zoom, use the link or phone number on the agenda at isearchmonterey.org. To call in by telephone, dial toll-free 833-568-8864. Enter meeting ID 161-622-2299, followed by the pound sign. Detailed instructions on using Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. To make a public comment using Zoom, raise your hand by clicking the raise hand button in the Zoom toolbar. If you dialed in by phone, please raise your hand by dialing *9. Public speakers will be called on the order of their hands raised. Today's meeting is also streamed live on the city's YouTube account at youtube.com/City of Monterey with an approximate 10-second delay, and on Comcast channel 25 with up to a 90-second delay. If you plan to make a public comment, please join the meeting using Zoom or by telephone and ensure you join in time to accommodate the delay. There are no public comments, Chair Evans.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we are moving on to the informational reports and staff comments. And first up is our director, Brian.
Thank you, Chair Evans. Starting off, want to make a note, we have Jonathan Fan. He's going to be working with us. He's an intern for both library and museums department. He has started with us earlier this week. This is a federal work study program in partnership with Middlebury Institute of International Studies. And Jonathan's going to be assisting us in different projects and grants. And I see him as also assisting in part of our Path of History project in the grant, assisting on that. We have Andres Garza joined the library as our new local history librarian. And he just joined recently. So he's been training under Dennis Copeland, and Andres has been doing a great job. So if you have any kind of local history search and questions coming up for the library, connect with us. Andres, and he's there full time as a librarian right now, Tuesday through Saturday. So the RFP is on the City of Monterey website, and as I mentioned earlier, it's funded by a Community Impact Grant from the Thomas Dowd Senior and Anita M. Dowd Fund of the Community Foundation of Monterey County. So that is up and it's going to be closing in approximately 2 weeks. And so I also sent that out to different firms and colleges in the area for information packets if they're interested in bidding into that project. Collection assessment for, proposal should be collection assessment for preservation. What is that? It's called a CAP grant through the American Institute for Conservation and the Foundation for Advancement Conservation Work, FAIC. Grant was awarded for Colton Hall and Old Jail. And I'm currently working through the next steps with that grant agency. That is the IMLS grant that when I was volunteering prior to joining library and museums, that's the one I applied for with the assistance of Jordan of getting the content. So that is to look at there's $4,000 appropriated for review of the collections and how that they're kept, and $4,000 for somebody to review the buildings and to do an assessment. We do have some older assessments from Colton Hall, but these are just to update those documents and to assist on that. The most recent agency I know in the area that got one of these grants is the Natural History Museum in PG. And so I've met with their executive director and just as casually and just asked how that process went and worked and everything. But other museums have got this, and it's for basically small and medium museums. Our California Constitutional Convention reenactment was held on October 16th at 2 p.m. And I'm sure Jordan's going to talk about that a bit too. And we had our dress rehearsal on the Saturday prior, on October 15th at 2 p.m. Seating was limited to 50 people. We did an online registration. So anybody that was on the wait list, we contacted them and just asked them to attend the Saturday showing so that we wouldn't overflow the room. And I filmed the reenactment and it's posted now on our City of Monterey museums page, as well as on the City of Monterey YouTube channel. So you can see the full recording on there. Yeah.
COVID, I wondered, maybe Jordan knows, how many people would attend the enactment prior to COVID? Was it like I thought it was like 100 or?
We couldn't do 100 because we would need the space for where the actors are
Oh,
as
yeah.
to be able to fill that. And so I think we usually did around 60 or 70 because it just not for like the music series, we're able to use almost the whole space, but for the reenactment, we're not. So I would say probably 60 or 70 people.
It's too bad. We had 50 people, but only 39 showed up, huh?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing about free programs
Mm.
is that when they are free to the public, you know, it's people decide something else comes up, or if they're sick, or if they just don't feel like going. But people that did go gave us great reviews in terms of afterwards. And I coordinated a path of history walking tour with California State Parks and Jordan for the Municipal Management Association of Northern California conference that was held last week. Different department heads, different like city manager kind of staff throughout Northern California attended just to see how we do our local history tours here in Monterey. So it was a great program. And with that, any questions?
I have a related question. You filmed the reenactment. It brings to mind, do we have a videographer with the city now? Eric Connor?
No, so the not officially, there is a camera still at City Hall. So they still have that camera there, but I couldn't find the charger. I found that there was a battery that was in there, but I couldn't find a battery charger. So I used a camera that was the libraries that we've used at different library programs. I think at the last time was at Japanese American Citizens League building was the last time it was used. And that was probably a couple of years ago. Yeah, so I checked with the city, but we would have had to contract it out. And based on kind of the museum budget, I didn't really have funding appropriated in the budget for a videographer. So that's why I came in and did it myself. Plus also talking with the performers, they didn't want to be too intrusive. Because getting one bid that we did on there, it would have been multi-camera setup, and we talked about doing that on like a dress rehearsal day to film it with nobody else in there, but just having the filming. And they preferred having a live audience as it being like a live show. And just the single camera setup was good for them because it was a recording of the event, but it's not like a professional recording that's going to replace an in-person experience, where they really think that the in-person experience of it is the ideal way to see that show. You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
So is this collection assessment grant implementation complex or anything? I mean, do we have the money? And
So, I mean, the funding, I believe, is going to be paid directly through IMLS. And so Institute of Museum and Library Services. So that grant, they're going to pay for that directly for up to that amount. So if there's anything in addition, or if you want to contract additional hours for that person, the archivist or whatever, I'll have a list. I have not reached out to that list yet to get bids. So that's going to be partially the next step. I just got access to their portal earlier this week or late last week. So I'm going through all of the documentation about what's next on there, but I should know by the next meeting what all the next steps are for implementation and any kind of assistance we'll need.
okay. All right. Next, if you want to hear from yeah.
Back.
Jordan, yes.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone.
I was trying to come up with
Yeah.
a good description, but because he's hard to describe.
I mean, I've been called worse than that, so
No,
it's okay.
He's fantastic.
Let's see. So October was a more fun month than the last couple of months, so that was nice. So I'll start with just going off the reenactment. It went well. It went off without a hitch. We couldn't have asked for a better transition, especially with, the amount of staff. And so, as Commissioner Wachowski mentioned, 39 people showed up out of the 50 signups. And I don't know the numbers for Saturday's reenactment or for rehearsals. But overall, I would say it's a success, or other than Christmas and Adobe's, this is our first event since 2019. So I'm pleased with it. And then tied to that, I was interviewed by the Monterey Herald by Tess Kenny about the reenactment, and the article is attached to this if you have not seen it yet. So it was nice to be able to talk about the event and get it publicized. We had a number of school tours visit both Colton Hall and the Pacific Biological Laboratories. And so it's nice this late in the year that we're still getting those tours, because usually it kind of slows down. And then, as Director Edwards mentioned, the Municipal Management Association of Northern California visited Colton Hall. And so I like to think I gave a fantastic 10-minute tour of the whole history of the building and what happened there. But they seemed very happy with it, and it was a beautiful day as well. So the fog had lifted and it was nice and sunny. We had a special tour visit the Pacific Biological Laboratories. That was the National Trust for Historic Preservation. So the board members visited. They visited numerous locations in Monterey to take a look at the buildings, but one of them was the lab. And one of the gentlemen there, David P. Wessel, was the gentleman who actually did the seismic upgrade and repaired the specimen tanks in the backyard of the lab. And so it was nice to have him back and give a more, architectural detail of the building compared to the normal tours that we give. And then our second Saturday tours were very well for October. We had 68 visitors. This will be the last, for now, this will be the last structured tour of, 9 o'clock, 10:30, 12:30, 1:30, 2:30. Starting this month on November 12th, we will have the 9 a.m. and the 10:30 a.m. structured tours, and then we will go to open hours. And so I will be there all day to just monitor and see how things go, to see if this works, take notes, help out wherever needed. And if it's a success, starting in January, we'll continue with the same setup. And then Commissioner Thomas led a tour of the lab through the Whatcom Museum. And so he gave a walking tour of Cannery Row, and then met at the lab. And I think he did a fantastic job. So thank you, Commissioner Thomas. And I finally restarted work on the Buffalo Soldiers exhibit. And so I'm currently working on the uniform and the mannequin and captions and photo credits. So it's still slow going because I'm just running around everywhere like crazy, but there is progress. I'm hoping that if things slow down, I can finish by the end of the year, but I don't want to make any promises or set expectations, but I'm trying. Oh, and then Director Edwards and I attended an event sponsored by the Torhouse Foundation where they dedicated the bronze sculptures at the Jeffers Plaza at the conference center. Yeah, my apologies. So it was a beautiful event. The artists were there. Councilman Albers was there. There was a councilwoman from Pacific Grove, I believe, or yeah. And so it was a well-attended event. And the sculptures and the bronze look fantastic. If you haven't been through there, I recommend it. And let's see, and then, so since we're sitting in the building, I had a request from City Manager Hans Uslar to research the architects who designed this building and the whole complex, other than the brown underwood adobe, because it's shares the same person as Santa Cruz. I think there was an inquiry about who built it. And so once I get some things done with the Buffalo Soldiers exhibit and doing some things at the lab to spruce up some of the exhibits, I'm going to start writing the history of that. And I've not personally been to the Santa Cruz City Hall, but it looks very similar to this setup. And so you can tell that there is a overlap of the same person. And lastly,
Why does the city manager want that?
I don't know exactly why. I just received an email asking about the history of it and that we should put it on the website and promote it. And I don't know if Director Edwards has more.
Yeah, it's just about putting up some more local history information up on our website, just about the historic buildings around here.
George, you might want to talk to Ken Seavey about that.
Okay.
That he can help you.
And then lastly, I got to have some fun putting a care package together for a family in France. A father in France reached out to Mayor Clyde and asked if we had any city flags and anything like that to send to his children. They were on hard times. And so I was able to get some City of Monterey flags, State of California flags, the information on both those flags, what they represent. And then we also, in Colton Hall, we have the history of Monterey translated in French. So I was able to send that as well. And so I put 2 copies of each because there were 2 children and I didn't want them to, feel left out. So that was sent out last week. So hopefully they receive that soon and enjoy it. And that is my report for October.
You might want to make flags plural in the last paragraph. Just for fun. And on the Jeffries Plaza, did we approve that this year after it?
No, that was approved let's see. Correct, yeah.
So you want to change that because it says January 2022. It was approved or installed.
Let's see.
In early 21, so it was approved after it was.
Oh, I'm sorry, I put 20, yeah, that needs to be a 2020. And then, yeah.
And finally, would like to call everybody's attention to the Whatcom Museum's, I guess it's their mission. And it's quoted here as committed to serving as both a community magnet and a regional destination for cultural experiences rooted in art, nature, and Northwest history.
That could be Stanton Center.
That's right.
Yeah.
So think about that.
I had 2 questions or comments.
Go.
If you look at the attendance comparison of our 3 museums, and I was talking briefly with Jordan on this before the meeting, the biological lab and Presidio Museum aren't doing too bad, but look at Colton Hall, 433 compared to 1550 or 1600. Obviously, back then we were open every day, and now we're only open a couple days. And so it's interesting to me that just those numbers of 1500 and 1600 that a lot of people who maybe as day trippers come to Monterey and they have a historic interest and they want to see Colton Hall or whatever. Jordan, you might indicate, you mentioned that by this spring that we'd be opening up Colton Hall a little bit longer.
Correct. The plan that we had set for with the budget was back to copy how we did this year. So in May, we will open back up Thursday through Sunday. And also some of these numbers that we see are a lot of school tours as well, which have drastically dropped due to COVID.
That's true.
And so that's where a lot of those high numbers are coming from, because we would get, tours every week from different schools. both K through 12 and college and DLI. And so those are slowly picking up. I mean, we're already getting scheduling for next year for schools to come in. And so, yeah,
So in looking forward, are you taking names and making reservations and with the assumption that we'll be open more?
no, what I do is if it's during the week, I either give the school tour or I see if a museum attendant can come in and give the school tour. Otherwise,
But that's this year. I'm talking about next year.
oh, well, next year, I write it down. I haven't scheduled it yet. I haven't like notes saying like, telling these people like this should be fine, but you know, check it with me beforehand because I don't want to schedule something and then something happens. And so, so yeah, I have the way I do it is I schedule it. I have a calendar for the museum attendants and I put it on there like this is coming up. It's open to whomever. And I make sure that we're in contact with them. And so we haven't set anything for next year, but it's in the December calendar that we need to start scheduling January, February.
Well, I would think that school groups might start planning for what they're going to do in this fall semester this spring. And so I think we need to have some inkling at least of whether or not we're going to be able to accommodate them. If we get a bunch of schools that want to come, we'll be able to accommodate them.
I'm just going to add as experience from working in a library for the past 23 years and having school groups, is they generally don't plan out their entire year ahead for all of their visits like this, because there's a lot of logistics on their side that they do have to deal with on the bus, the parents getting approval from the principals, how many days they can do every year. Those things can change. So usually we hear from them 2 to 3 months in advance quite often. That's about what we're getting. And we don't always know what other events or other things are going to be happening on Colton Hall lawn or there at Colton Hall. So putting out a calendar a year in advance, I think is a little bit ahead of time especially for school groups. If there's a special visit where we know somebody's coming internationally or there's another special event, I think that's good to do. But I think having a process of saying we can look on this on the calendar and schedule a date ahead of time is fair for us to say that with them, to say we'll look at this in this quarter, or we'll look at this 6 months ahead of time, but not to do like next October or next November. That's quite a ways away right now.
And pre-pandemic, this is how it worked as well. They would just usually call in a month ahead and be like, hey, this school would like to come and visit on this day. Does that work? And then we'd look at the calendar and say, oh, yes, that works. And so that's all we can do for now. But I don't see it being an issue anytime soon.
I would just like to be in a place so we're not discouraging schools from coming.
Yeah, we're not there yet, but
I don't think I don't think we have been, because we've been taking on days where, as you see on the notes and on the minutes here, where Jordan has been leading tours at different sites on the other days of the week. And we've been doing, like when we had our Municipal Management Association walk, that was on a different day of the week. And we came out there on a Thursday, I believe that was, and did the tour. And that was planned about 2 months ahead of time, 1 to 2 months ahead of time. So it's pretty common for us to do these things about 1 to 2 months ahead of time. And we've been accommodating different groups at PBL at Colton Hall with advanced notice. But I'm just saying, for planning out a full year ahead is quite a lot of time to offer out, because that gives out, and going back to my experience working there in the library, if you offer out too much and then you end up with other things going on that day, if you end up having to host a special event, you are kind of shooting yourself in the foot, because you've already scheduled out other groups ahead of other things that you might want to do yourself as part of a group. So you set up priorities for, this is where these are our dates. And then coming in as like the requests can be handled, and the requests can be handled at a reasonable manner for us, with 1 to 3 months kind of notice, I think is totally acceptable.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the reports? If not, let's move on to our public appearance item. So we're to select an ad hoc committee for extended Path of History project. So Brian, you want to fill us in on what we're doing?
Sure thing. So I know that we had you'll see on the last attachment, we have our grant for up to $30,000 to look at a consultant to look at 2 new historic walks. One of the ones that was identified in the initial grant proposal is possibly through the Pearl District, which is the Japantown there. And other one was a tour possibly located out of Colton Hall as the base. So with that, like as I mentioned before, there is a project on OpenGov, which is on the city's procurement website. For the documents are on there right now. And what I would like to see is an ad hoc subcommittee to go through that process to review the grants. And as we get see what the proposals are going to be from the consultants, and we have to spend the money by May of 2023, I believe the date is. So with that, if we're looking with the ad hoc subcommittee to meet with the group to recommend a site map and put together our recommendations. I know in the initial proposal, I believe there was a subcommittee consisting of Chair Evans, Vice Chair Thomas, and Bill W. So I'm not sure if there are thoughts on changing that up or want to put together a recommendation if you wanted to put together an ad hoc subcommittee or bring it back to the full committee for discussion as we're doing this. But I think with having a ad hoc subcommittee would be be good for us to look at and making recommendations for work with the staff to work on a consultant, to choosing our consultant to start off with.
Okay, Bill, do you have a question or?
No, I mean, well, for sure, Tim should be involved. I mean,
Yeah.
because the Japanese, I mean, I thought we just keep the old subcommittee that we had and go from there. Bob, Tim and myself, but if other members want, we're limited to 3.
John, you interested?
Well, you have 3.
Well, I wouldn't,
Somebody would have to drop out.
well, I'd be willing to drop out. I'm interested in the project, definitely, but.
Well, I think you.
Okay, so the subcommittee that is proposed is Wachowski, Tim, and Evans. And let's see, this is a public appearance item, so we need input from the public.
If you would like to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. There are no public comments.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
You actually don't.
I so moved.
All
You
right,
can just appoint.
second,
I was saying you can just appoint without making a motion.
I can act like a king and say, okay,
If you want to.
you, and you
Yes.
are the subcommittee.
Thank you.
All right. So I will,
Thank you, Your Highness.
so Chair Evans, once I get the proposals in, which should be in roughly 2 weeks, I'll notify the ad hoc subcommittee and then we'll go with the next steps from there.
Okay, that's great. All right, it's time for commissioner comments. So,
Can I start?
sure,
Thank you all for the lovely card. It was really thoughtful. And it is a tough time, but it's lovely it was lovely to hear from all of you. So thank you.
John,
Well, I have a question about our favorite topic, the subcommittees, communication we got from friends. Question, what's the problem with having standing committee? I understand you have to notice them, they're open to the public, but that doesn't seem burdensome. So what's
I had a brief discussion with her this morning after reviewing the letter. And basically that's it. It's additional burden on the secretarial staff because you have to advertise it and post the agenda. But that's really the only difference.
Yeah, that's what I got from reading it.
Yeah, and she also, I mean, it was clarified that you can't just change the composition of a subcommittee, like on the music subcommittee. That if you have an ongoing project that's gonna last more than 6 months, you need to change it from ad hoc to standing.
Mm,
And again, it's just as you said, it just is the Brown Act. We have to meet in ADA accessible place and advertise it.
Well, that's why I got from reading this.
My reading of it was that we could have an ad hoc music subcommittee because all the subcommittee is doing is recommending performers for the concerts and that the commission made the final decision. In other words, we had a list of potential performers we had listened to and made a recommendation to the group as a whole. In fact, actually, the committee didn't meet to decide what to recommend. We had a notebook full of CDs that were the submissions along with the information. And that notebook got passed from one member of the committee to another. And then the committee met and came up with
That's a very
recommendation.
special case. I think that's different from almost all other subcommittees. Like when we met on the strategic plan, we actually met with Brian. It might be, Bob, that you talked to Chrissy Davy about that particular case, because that is different than any others. But all of our subcommittees, none of our subcommittees ever make a decision.
That's
They just
right.
make a recommendation.
That's right. So anyway, that's why I think that it would really be nice to have Chrissy or one of her deputies that works with you on the museums and cultural arts component meet with us so that we can get our attitudes and understanding of this in sync with theirs. Because I think it'll continue to come up until we do that. Anybody else? Let's see. Tim? John?
I just have one item. MHAA is having a mixer at Casa Serrano. I'll try to remember to send this out to all of you. This Sunday from 4:30 to 6. I think they scheduled that perfectly for the NFL schedule because most of the games are over at 4:30. But anyway, they said it's invited to all MHA members and all volunteer groups. And of course, we are a volunteer group. So if you haven't been to Casa Serrano, you know, this would be a good time to go. It has one of the most tremendous art collections.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, we can talk to some of them informally over a glass of wine or something about John's idea, the City Museum too. Their president won't be there because I think he's in Europe for one more week. But it's this Sunday from 4:30 to 6. I'll try to send this email out to you today or tomorrow.
Okay.
Right, just one thing I forgot.
Yes.
So, you know, I've been giving walking tours of the Monterey waterfront for a number of years. And starting on Saturday, I've stopped them since May and I'm bringing back up. They'll all be free tours. And so, I'll be doing a wharf tour, waterfront tour on the first Saturday every month, every other month, and then the month I'm not doing the wharf tour, I'll be doing free tours of the Lower Presidio. So if you're interested, you can call me. I only take 15 people in those things.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Okay. And I have no further comments. So with that,
And except, just check with Sovereign, Commissioner Sovereign.
Thank you.
yeah,
Can you hear me?
out of sight, out of mind, but we do want to hear from you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Looks like it's still.
Oh,
Hear you.
can you hear me?
Disappearing.
Testing.
I can hear you. I can hear you,
I
Mike.
can hear you.
Oh, okay, thank you. With sadness that I note the passing of Harriet Lynn.
Oh, yeah.
Unexpectedly, lung cancer got her.
And she has had several performance jobs for the city. She was the director of our reenactment of the Battle of Monterey, back to the 200th anniversary, back in 2018. And the city signed her up to prepare a celebration for the 300th birthday on 2020, which we all know was canceled because of COVID, but she did a great deal of work and brought groups in to plan. She's a real hard worker and loss of a real asset to the community.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Mike.
That's all.
Okay, any others? All right, then,
The weekly today, have an article about and we're sending up. So I call your attention to that. Important to keep that.
good, yeah. That's in this week's weekly,
Today,
today.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Any other items? All right, then on that note, we'll adjourn the meeting.